A few weeks ago, my wife and I took a tour of Taliesin, which is Frank Lloyd Wright's home down in Spring Green, Wisconsin. I thought I would share some of the things I observed there from a woodworker's perspective. We started the tour at a building that Frank had designed for his aunts. They were going to make it a school, and they used it as a school for a number of years. In this picture, you can see the main school part. In this next picture, you can see the drafting studios, which unfortunately they don't allow you to take pictures of the inside, but that was a very unique design, and you can find some pictures of that online. So this part is still used as his school for architecture. In these buildings, a lot of the work was done by the architecture students. So you can see that it's not fine crafted. There's not a lot of fancy joinery or anything. It's mostly plain sawn lumber. A lot of it's painted, and there's a lot of plywood used. I was actually really surprised how much plywood Frank Lloyd Wright used throughout his home and in these buildings. The edges of the plywood were either left plain, or they would be painted, or sometimes they would have a piece of wood glued over them. But there was basically no fancy joinery to be seen. This space was like the meeting hall for the school and then for his architecture school later on. You can see that some of the furniture design is not held up with age because it's just veneered plywood, and a lot of it's painted and the paint is chipping or coming up. Frank Lloyd Wright's students started a tradition of creating boxes for him for his birthday every year. This is an example of one of the boxes that a student created for him. Eventually there was 100 such of these boxes. They only had a couple for display here, but I thought it was interesting to see that the students would try to show some of the things that he had taught them through these simple boxes. Here's another picture of the outside of the drafting studio. It has a unique roof design that allows light to come in from the north, which Frank really liked. One thing that surprised me was how low some of the ceilings were in Frank's buildings. You can see here that the entrance to this building is only maybe 6 feet tall or something. I had to duck to get under it. And he wanted to create the sense of that you had to move into a space. So the entrances of a space would have low ceilings, and then it would open up into the actual space itself. So it kind of forced people to move in through the entrance out into the middle of the space. You had this feeling of being closed in and then like a release as you were moving into the rest of the building. Here's some interesting stools he designed for the theater on the grounds. And you can see they're a triangular shape, so you can kind of nest them together. They're just made out of plywood that's been painted. This is a pretty cool looking lamp that I think is one of the more popular designs. This one's a really big one, but there's ones of all different sizes. I thought it was kind of interesting that in the gift shop they had one that was similar to this that was for sale for like $1,500, and it was all made out of cherry and, professionally made. And actually these ones that are on the grounds were all made by students, and they're all made with painted plywood. So the stuff that he created for himself wasn't overly fancy. I mean, it was basically design projects for his students. It was things that they could make. It wasn't fine woodworking by any means. This is Romeo and Juliet, which is a windmill that Wright designed for his property. When it was being built, a lot of people told him that it would fall down in the first storm, but it actually ended up surviving even when a lot of other structures were blown down. The tall part is called Romeo, and the shorter part is called Juliet, and they're supposed to kind of intertwine and add strength to one another. This isn't the original structure. It was rebuilt in the early 90s, although the original structure did survive for about 100 years. Wright designed a house for his sister on the property. These are some pieces of furniture that were there. I really like the curved arms on this chair and how the legs curve out as well, and the kind of the contrast between these curves and the straight up and down of the back. It was impressive to see how even in the smallest buildings he would take a lot of consideration in designing them. A good example are these two. This one was some housing for students that would live on the property. This is another one that served as housing but was originally a chicken coop. They both share a distinctive style and blend in with the environment. I was surprised to learn that Wright and his students did a lot of gardening and a lot of farm work on the property. This is the barn that he designed for it, and even this has his own distinctive style. I enjoy the fact that his students were involved in all aspects of life there. It wasn't like they just came to learn how to design. They were there and they were working on structures, they were gardening, they were taking care of animals. They were all working together as a community. So it seems like there was probably a really strong communal feel. This is the first view we had of Taliesin from the road. And actually in the tour, it's kind of cool that you walk up this long winding road all the way up to the building. So you kind of get to see the view that guests would have seen as they were walking up to the building. Actually, the whole tour took us about 4 hours. And it was kind of expensive tour to take, but I felt like it was worth the money because you got to see the entire property and really got a feeling for what would have been like to work there and kind of what Wright's vision was for the area. It's not like something that's just pulled out of context. You get to see all the context around it. And I also like the fact that I knew the money that we were paying for this tour was going to be going to help the restoration work. This is a part of a courtyard at Taliesin, and you can see this distinctive red color everywhere. This was kind of Frank Lloyd Wright's signature. This is some furniture he designed for a string quartet to play at when they were at his property, and I really liked that he didn't just design furniture for, it wasn't just for musicians, it wasn't just for string players, it was for a string quartet. So he was thinking exactly of the group of people that he wanted to use this furniture. And you can see that it's been used well over time. As you're walking around the whole property, a lot of the stuff looked kind of worn. You can tell it had dings and scratches, and because a lot of it was made out of plywood, it had chips taken out of it. Like you can see in these chairs, if you look closely, that they have chips of plywood coming out of them. I like that you could see that everything had been used. It wasn't just museum pieces. This stuff was used in daily life. These are some of his barrel chairs, which are probably some of his most famous pieces of furniture. If you Google Frank Lloyd Wright furniture, this will probably be the first thing that comes up. And actually, even in this, he used plywood. Those rails that are going up and down in the back, those are pieces of plywood, although if you buy the version that they sell today, they're made out of solid wood. I like the little details like these doors that cover all these little windows up in the corner under the rafters. I just thought it was kind of a neat design. You could use a pole or something to close them if you wanted to. The views from the property are really impressive, and actually during his time, he said that he had finally made it when everything that he could see was owned by him. So all these hills that surrounded the property, they were all his. And a lot of that's been sold off over time, of course. But at one time, everything that, as far as the eye could see was his own. This is some kind of cool nesting furniture that he had in his office. Again, made out of plywood with just some strips of wood around to cover the edges. Really kind of beat up and well used. Actually, it was interesting to stand in his office because as I'm taking this picture, I kind of have to crouch down because the ceiling is only about maybe 5.5 feet tall, which for him would have been fine because he was pretty short. But for me, was definitely a challenge in a lot of parts of the building. Wright designed a lot of interesting chairs which are on the property. Some people remarked to him that his chairs weren't very comfortable, and his reply was, well, we shouldn't sit so much anyway. In a recent episode of the Fine Woodworking podcast, they mentioned that the Shakers designed these chairs that were comfortable to sit in for about 15 minutes, which kind of makes sense given their lifestyle, and actually makes sense for Frank Lloyd Wright because he was interested in doing stuff. He was interested in spending his time designing and in being part of the community and farming. He was an active person. So for him, sitting wasn't probably something that he wanted to spend a lot of his time doing. Overall, seeing Taliesin was a really cool experience. I would definitely recommend seeing it if you are anywhere close to Spring Green. And even though the tour we took was kind of expensive, it was about $80 a person, I thought that was well worth it. We were really lucky that we had an incredible day to do it. It was perfect weather, not too warm, which is good because we were walking around the property and didn't rain or anything. So um, overall, it was a great experience, and the guide that was showing us around just knew so much about Frank Lloyd Wright and so much about the property. She had been giving tours different there for about 20 years. And afterwards, we went back to the gift shop, which was also designed by Frank Lloyd Wright, and we ate some lunch there, and it was an awesome day. So if you ever get a chance to see it, I would highly recommend it. In my next video, I'll start work on a portable hand tool workbench. Thanks for watching, and see you next time. Take care.